The first is failure to try is failure. If you don't try, by definition, you will not start. And I think that for me is what I would advise anyone, any student that is trying to start a business or is trying to start a project. I'd say start. Don't get worried about whether you know everything at the time of your commencement, but failure to try is basically failure.
Welcome, everybody, to the newest episode of Voices of Hult. It's almost 40 episodes that we've done already all across the three campuses of Hult. And today, I'm here with you guys. My name is Peter, and I'm here with...
Lucia. Hello, guys. I'm back again. This is my second episode co-hosting with Peter, and I'm really happy to be here.
She is back again. Last time we had Mia, and hopefully next time we're going to have maybe even a bit more people, a bit more hosts from the team. But we have a really, really special guest today. His name is Daniel, and a lot of you who study at the London campus might already know him. He's kind of a legend. I would say he's one of the faces of Hult London undergrad, being really proactive in a lot of different things, and probably one of the most favorite professors, but he's really humble, so I'm sure he's not going to tell you all of it just yet. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you, Lucia. Thank you, Peter. Excited to be here. Looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. Well, tell us a bit more about yourself. Just a little brief background. Usually we talk with the guest beforehand, and Daniel only had like 5 or 10 minutes of his time when I invited him. So I asked him, because there's like more, like if I speak to a guest for an hour, there's like more follow-up questions. Since he only had 10 minutes, I asked him like a really important question. If he had to define his life in maybe 3 to 5 key sections, what would they be? Daniel, what was your answer?
I cannot remember, Peter. What was it?
So you said sports,
Yep.
You said education,
Yep.
and you said business.
Absolutely. I think those three dimensions actually speak to my upbringing, speak to who I am today. I think those three areas pretty much sum up who I am today. Yep.
That's really cool. Now, I asked you a follow-up question on that as well, and I'm sorry if Ms. Rukare is watching this as well. Family.
Yes.
Could you elaborate why? No. I'm joking. You don't have
No.
to.
I'm happy to talk about family. I think family is a very strong institution that I think shapes who we are. I think it also determines the type of foundation that each individual has. So family is important. I grew up in a middle-class family in Uganda. We grew up at different universities. My father was actually a professor. So we grew up at universities, mainly in Uganda. But we did travel across Africa, so we went to places like Swaziland, we lived in places like Mbambane. And yeah, so family is very strong. Right now, obviously, that also speaks to the type of family that I'm trying to manage myself with my wife. But I think that the family structure speaks volumes to both the foundational aspects, but also for the safety net that it gives individuals to be able to seek, to be able to go out there in the world and try and make a difference.
I would really put family and friends in the same category as well.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of my friends that I made here coming to London, or even before, have just become a family. I mean, recently you saw this at the pitch competition where you, like, for example, you can rely on your team in some situations, but you can always rely on friends and family when you need help.
Absolutely. I think there are two dimensions to family. There's the family that is inherently yours. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And then there's the family that you create. Those are the friends that you build relationships with. You build shared value, or whole shared values that you have with those. And they become your immediate family. In fact, I believe that most of the friends that you make here at campus would be long-term family per se. So I think apart from the family that is inherently given to us without choice, there's one that we build with conscious rational choices, and I think those are the friends that you talk about. So those two are actually intertwined and interrelated. Yeah.
Cool. Well, you also mentioned sports, so
Yeah.
this is kind of how it's going to be divided.
Yeah.
It's completely up to you, really, if you want to speak off topic. But why did you mention sports? Why is it so important for you as a person?
Yes, so I think sports is something that can brings people together in a different way that most other events or attributes in life would find it challenging to do. But on a personal note, we grew up. I grew up engaged in sports, athletics, swimming, basketball. Believe it or not, I mean, some of my students look at me now and think that I did not engage in any sport. But I'm actually an avid swimmer, so I swim a lot. Still play basketball and a bit of squash as well. So sports allows us to be able to engage. It allows us to cross different boundaries that would not ideally have crossed. Because you can imagine, if you're playing squash, I mean, you don't know who you're going to play with. There's a partner who's looking to play a game. And those could be the triggers of building the friendships that we had spoken about earlier. I've met people at the health club that have gone on to become extremely good friends. But apart from that, I think sports in itself, from a different ontological perspective, is something that, if we use a business lens, it is the most underrated area that has not been exploited by business. Today, the industry of sports is one of the fastest growing. It has got various dimensions. It has got things like preventative medicine. It has got aspects of nutrition. It has got aspects of merchandising. And I think that's the area that most people are engaged in. But it has got areas of nutrition as well. So that, for me, is an area that, if we looked at it from a different ontological perspective and looked at and asked ourselves, how can business students exploit sports? There's a huge opportunity there that I believe can be tapped into.
That's why we had the Hult Olympics.
Oh, yes. And I think that Hult is at the forefront of innovating through education. At Hult, as you must know, we are pushing the boundary and trying to be able to allow the students to apply themselves through getting the knowledge, but applying it. The application of knowledge is very important because what you don't want is a functioning illiterate. I always say that.
That's a good one.
Yes, so you've got individuals that might purport to know something but cannot apply that, and industry has changed. Most companies, when I was growing up, had management training programs. Today, most organizations are looking for students that are ready on day one. And that is what we do at Hult. We ensure that our students, all the way from things like the internships that they do, the class challenges that different professors engage with in different specializations, even the core modules of the new BBA program. So this speaks to an area that is extremely wide and has many opportunities that can be extracted.
I have a question.
Yes, sure, Lucia.
So, when you talk about the way of teaching,
Yeah.
we know that Hult is very much learning by doing.
Yeah.
And I've had you multiple times as a professor.
Yeah.
And you're one of the professors that completely, I know that I don't need to look at the slides.
Correct.
I know that the slides are there,
Correct.
but they're kind of, like, I don't even have to look at them.
Correct.
Because one thing that I love, and I kind of want you to go in depth about
Yes.
why you do that and your
Yes.
process, your thought process through
Yes.
that. You go through stories, anecdotes, or
Yes.
your own personal experiences
Yes.
doing things. And
Yes.
that, for me, helps me so much visualize things.
Yes.
And helps me also build, like, a connection with you where, like, I can really understand how you can apply that in a real world scenario.
Yes.
And
No,
can I
yeah.
just add,
Yeah,
it's
sure.
always different.
Yeah.
That's what I enjoy. It's like, I cannot imagine you give this class 20 times because something new comes up. You're like, hey, this happened last week. Let's
Yeah.
talk about it. This is what I found a couple of weeks ago or
Yeah.
anything like that. I really do enjoy that.
No, I think it stems from a philosophical way of teaching that simplicity breeds complexity. So if you cannot explain something to a 5-year-old, it is very hard then to take it back to its complex area of interpretation. So what I try and do in my classes, I always say that the slides represent 20% of a repository that a student can tap into. And then the professor in class brings around about 40 to 50 or 60% in terms of their input. And then further research by the students. And so that is the foundation of the approach that I use, or the pedagogical approach that I use in classes. Now, imagine if I stood in class and read off the slides. I mean, half the class would be wondering why,
Yeah.
be wondering why they're there.
Yeah.
The other half would probably have left. So I think that, so what I try and do is to ensure that, look, there are different ways of trying to explain something. Let me give you an example. Imagine I wanted to talk about aspects of extracting value, correct? So the extracting of value is a very interesting thing. It has many dimensions. It has got dimensions of pricing. It has got dimensions of building business models that most people would want to have.
Of course.
And I could bring up several slides. In fact, there's a repository of material that is.
There is so much knowledge that you can read about.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, these days, we've got tools that help us. We've got AI tools and stuff like that. But the using analogies that allow students to be able to relate that to their day-to-day life, and then relating that back to the theory, allows them to be able to envision what that particular theoretical interpretation is. And that is the approach that I try and use. And you've got to do that to be able to understand who your audience is, understand what they resonate with, for you to be able to then try and ensure that they understand the theory before they look at it in this complexity of slides. Yeah, so that's the approach I try and. Simplicity breeds complexity. I always say you can't explain something to a 5-year-old, you yourself don't understand it.
So you're talking about learning.
Yes.
I was wondering, when you were learning how to teach, were you always like this? Were you always sharing anecdotes even before? Because, for example, when I try to share my experience, I'm only 20 years old, and it's like, hey, like you don't have that much experience. Yeah. Were you doing this when you were young?
No, that would be a lie if I said that. I think it has grown over the period that I've been teaching, but also peer-to-peer reviews. You get feedbacks. You get feedback from colleagues. You also learn from those that are doing this at the highest level. I think that for me it's a journey. It's not, I did not start out teaching like this. No.
Do you think you got something from your father?
Yes, so my father,
Since he was a professor?
yes, my late father used to use very many terminology. He used to be he was an interesting man. He used to say, the failure for you to understand someone is not their problem, it is yours. So, for example, I'll give you an example.
Okay.
I want to be politically correct. so we'd come back home one day, and we had lovely white seats and lovely carpets and stuff like that. And my dad would be sitting with someone who's less fortunate in the sitting room that he had found at the side of the road.
Okay.
And they're having a deep conversation, having a cup of tea.
Wow.
And so my younger brother once asked him, said, why do you do this? Obviously, my mom would be pulling her hair out because of her white carpets and stuff like that. And he said, look, the individual sitting in the living room might be different, but what we've got to try and do is understand where they're coming from, understand who they are. Their circumstances might be different, but that does not make them a different human being. So you try and understand them for who they are, the position that they're currently in, and that does not actually define who they will be in future. And so that is some of the background to the way I think, what informs the way I deal with different situations.
That's actually really cool. Thanks
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sharing.
no, that's
That
just
was,
an analogy
wow.
that,
Yeah, I had a question,
Yeah,
and I
sure.
mean it's more like a realization.
Yeah.
When you first mentioned sports, I was like, "Hey, it's quite distant from business." But then
Yeah.
I realized as you were talking about
Yeah.
it that we have the coaches here as well.
Yeah.
Like when Max kind of came up with the
Correct.
idea of like coaches, he's
Correct.
in sports management and everything. It's really similar to making that progress also in business because technically how I viewed business when I started, it's more like a game.
Yeah.
It's like you're kind of collecting levels, you're collecting that knowledge, you're collecting the assets to further develop. Kind of similar with sports where
Yep.
you're going to do this faster. Once you start a business, you do it in 2 years, then you do it in 1 year, and then you're going to have that experience to start it in 2 months.
Yes, and I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think there's so many other angles that we could also look at. Repetition is an interesting part of learning. Repetition allows you consciously and subconsciously to be able to start building an understanding. In sports, we call it muscle memory. For example, if you haven't gone to the gym for a few days and you go back to the gym, then your muscles are like, so what's happening? And they're reacting to that particular unfamiliar exercise that you're doing today that you have not done for the last couple of days or weeks. And that's the same with education. If you get into a habit of repeating what it is that you're learning, but you use different ontological aspects of how that is done and interpreted, then you stand a better chance. And I think, Lucia, you mentioned something. You see, there are different ways that students learn.
Yeah.
Others are visual. Others work collaboratively. Others do most of their learning through things like teamwork and collaborating with other students, whereby they're avoiding what I refer to as groupthink. That groupthink. They have cognitive diversity, whereby they're able to look at a specific challenge and, from different perspectives, try and address that particular challenge. I think that works really well at Hult.
So I think this made me think a bit,
Yep.
like how I learned, because
Correct.
I thought I was always like a visual, but then you can still see that visual and not remember something. And at Holt, we have this motto of like learning by doing. It would be really close to how I learned, but I think I learned by failing.
Yeah. You know, you see, failure has got several interpretations. Different cultures, different jurisdictions, different societies look at failure in different ways. There's some who look at failure as something that they have got to hide and put away and not look at. However, failure is one of the best teachers because it, first of all, purely from strategy, it shows you what not to do, purely from a strategic perspective. But if you look at it from a different angle, it also allows you to be able to grow as an individual. It also allows you to be able to iterate new ways of trying to deal with whatever you're trying to deal with. And I look at it as, I don't want to go to the cliche aspects of fail fast, fail quick, fail cheap. But in terms of failure, I would say that as one of the pillars of growth, failure sits right up there in terms of a pillar that allows for both personal growth, intellectual growth, and building of knowledge.
Actually, I've never really believed in failure because
Yeah.
every single time I've failed, I've learned something
Technically.
from it,
Good.
or I've learned something from it, or I take that failure as like that was just a step in the process to achieve something good.
Yes, and sometimes you need to be able to fail to be able to realize that you yourself have got to build aspects of resilience
Yeah.
and adaptability. You have that agility that you're able to start moving in different directions, having gone through some form of downturn.
Yeah.
I always say that life is not linear. It's a complex adaptive system, and complex adaptive systems will always have ups and downs. Okay. The question is going to be how you emerge from those challenges with better knowledge, better capabilities, better resilience, that you're able to then, and this speaks to the way we teach at Holt as well. because you can imagine when students are working in groups, there's sometimes a bit of tension. And I always say,
Yeah.
I
A
say
lot.
there's a lot of tension. I imagine that you did not experience that.
Yeah.
Imagine the flip side of that. Imagine you did not experience that, and you experienced that at doing work.
Yeah.
So would you be equipped to deal with that?
Actually, I found it really interesting because I was in a job interview the other day,
Yeah.
and I've never really appreciated the beauty of the teams at
Yeah,
Hult.
correct.
They asked me a question. They're like, what is one of the most like difficult challenges you've had, like at uni?
Working in a
Or,
team.
like, and I was like, working in teams, and then I explained my entire experience in working in different teams, and then they were like, oh, what were your projects? And I explained my projects, and they really liked it.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
They really
Because
liked it, yeah.
it builds that resilience that not many others that haven't gone through that particular type of education would have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot
Many
of times.
unis are very like, many unis are very like, do your own work, do your individual work.
Correct.
Maybe do a presentation with someone else.
That's
But
it.
then like duos is not the same thing as like 7 people
No.
sitting in one
No.
room.
A lot of the times I feel like when I speak to my friends in other universities, they don't really have group work. They're just like, okay, write a 4,000 word essay and then submit it, and that's it.
And these days we have tools that could do that in 5 minutes, actually less.
That is also a thing. Yeah. How do we beat the system?
Yeah, and I think that the tools, the AI tools, in fact at Hult we have an AI policy that is driving the way we engage with AI. I think it's something that we cannot shy away from. I think we've got to be able to embrace it. The question is going to be how we use AI as a supporting tool to be able to build and enhance the overall academic journey for both students, faculty, in the way we use it to be able to build new knowledge around this, how it's going to affect business, et cetera, et cetera. I think that for me is something I really appreciate here at Hult, that we have actually built an AI policy that we are actually driving forward and is helping us to be able to actively engage with AI. I think we're ahead of the industry in that
Ahead of the
regard.
curve for sure.
Yeah,
The AI policy is definitely effective. I feel like
Correct.
a lot of universities just banning students from
Correct.
using AI in general. I feel like if we can reference it, if it can help us, most importantly, if we get assignments that AI can't necessarily write for us, I think that's the approach that we should go for. Universities should go for in the future.
I've learned to live with AI. I did an internship in Madrid this past
Yeah.
summer, and it was very much based on like coding, and we coded like a whole program to teach people Spanish and English, and we actually utilize AI as one of our main toolboxes. And I think through that experience, I learned that I don't have to see it as an enemy.
Correct.
I can see it as my little friend.
Yeah, your little friend in the corner that adds value to whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
Shortens what I always refer to it as disintermediation. It's shortening the time of remedial tasks. It supports in areas that you might need it to be able to synthesize information. So for me, I think it's something that we have to embrace, and I'm happy that we have embraced it, and we're ahead of the curve. Yep.
Now to quickly touch upon maybe a bit more of your businesses.
Yes.
I know a lot of people look up to you with like the
Oh, do they?
entrepreneurship accent.
I can't keep up with how many businesses
yeah.
you've mentioned in class.
And
Well.
like you're the professor of entrepreneurship
Yes.
and you're also the lead of Hult Founders Lab.
Yes.
I wonder, what are you currently spending most of your time on, if you can share a bit?
Of the 23 hours a day that you're awake.
Yeah. No, I think that prioritizing time is very important. Luckily, at Hult, we have got faculty that are not just scholarly academic, but are also practitioners that are also doing what it is that they're teaching. And I think that, for me, brings a wealth of experience to the class. It allows us to be able to put a face to some of these things like, you're having issues with liquidity, your burning rates and stuff like that. So what am I doing? I'm doing a few things. So I'm involved in some properties.
I've seen.
I do. I think that I chose that because of the ratio between capital exposure and the yield rate. And I think, for example, I don't like talking about money, but for every 100,000 £1,000 you could be able to leverage, you could get up to 1.2 million in terms of asset value.
Wow.
So that type of model allows for minimal exposure of capital with maximum return in terms of asset value. So I mean, to a bit of property, obviously you have a family business that we're engaged in and that we're trying to transform. We're continuous process of transformation. We're trying to add value to it to ensure that it's not where I would want it to be, but I always say it's a process because with family businesses, it's not about the speed. It's about building tenacity, building intergenerational capabilities that allow the family business to go from multiple generations as opposed to usually the 3 generations. And then I'm doing a bit of consulting with PwC, and that is going really well. A fantastic company, also ahead of the curve in terms of new areas of consulting and how they actually approach their customers and add value to their customers. So that's what I'm doing, and I try and bring that back into class to make sure that the students. I mean, if you're helping a business go through a transformation process, I mean, without mentioning the company's name and obviously not breaking your NDAs, you can actually bring back the fundamentals into class to be able to ensure that students are benefiting from that.
Okay, it's also the lessons that you learned along the way. It's not
Absolutely,
necessarily, sharing what's happening in the business.
I don't want to say this, but I'll say it.
Watch out.
Watch out, yes. I started my real first business in 1996. Yeah, I think that has brought it home. Because recently, my students in my class told me that they were born in 2006.
Oh.
And I was like...
2006.
I was like, yeah. And that brought a bit of perspective to it. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. And what were you proud of that business? How did that go?
So that is a fantastic business. I set it up with a classmate, still very close friend of mine called Prosper Kaze, a very nice guy from Burundi. We set up a business in a hotel where we're doing translation services for conferences, would manage the conferences, would event manage, would do things like printing the brochures for the place. I remember in the latter years of that, we tried to send an email, and that was, I don't know whether you guys have heard of a dial-up system that would be making so much noise in the background. And so that we're still friends. Learned a lot in terms of getting co-founders. But yes, a fantastic business supported by my family in terms, mainly my sister was giving me
That's nice.
bootstrapping money to be able to start.
Cool. That's cool. It's always nice to raise somebody from family.
Oh
right?
yes.
It's definitely nice not giving up too much equity, to random people
Well,
who are gonna
actually,
push
she
you for
didn't.
profit.
She didn't take any equity, which was
Great.
nice. I remain indebted. Unfortunately, the trade-off is that you get indebted.
Yeah.
You're still in debt.
I'm still in debt. Yes, true. It's true.
Cool.
Wow.
Do you have anything?
Actually, I have a question.
Yes.
How did you? I've always wondered this, because I'm not from the UK.
Yes.
It came out of the blue. How did you end up in the UK? Because
That's
you're
a
from
good question.
Russia, right?
I like that. I was going to crack a very bad joke, but let me not do that.
Go ahead.
It's okay. We appreciate jokes.
If
here.
it's too much, we can like beep it out.
No. I was going to say, I've got to.
We'll let it slide.
You let it
You tell us
slide.
later.
See, I'll tell you off camera. Yes, off camera. No, I came to the UK. So I was working for several companies. I was working for Federal Express, DHL. Rose to sales manager at DHL, and then I took study leave and decided to come and study, and then did my first master's, did my second master's, and then that was it.
You just stayed.
And I just stayed.
Said yes.
I got the London bag, and unfortunately, now this is another 20 odd. I don't want to mention how many years down the road. I'm still here in London, so yeah. But that's how I came. It was purely out of study leave from work. I remember that they kept my job for 2 years, expecting me to go back. And I had to have that, yes, I had to have that conversation and say, look, I think
I'm gonna stay.
I might have to stay in London, yeah?
Yeah. What I'm personally most interested in,
Yeah.
what would be your one and only advice if somebody was considering, for example, starting their own business or maybe even joining Hult Founders Lab to help them start their startup project? If you only had to pick one singular thing from running all these companies for the past 20 years, what would be one singular advice that they should do or they shouldn't do?
Can I have two?
Yeah, you.
I'm being greedy.
Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
being greedy. Sorry, Peter. The first is failure to try is failure. If you don't try, by definition, you will not start. And I think that for me is what I would advise anyone, any student that is trying to start a business or is trying to start a project. I would say start. I mean, don't get worried about whether you know everything at the time of your commencement, but failure to try is basically failure. So I would say don't go down that road. Number two, individuals are the architects of their own destiny.
Okay.
If you believe in that, anybody else that supports your journey is an additional bonus. But don't leave the variables to others to shape who you are and where you want to go. Be very deliberate about what you want. Be very deliberate about how you're going to get there. And it doesn't matter whether you've got resources, the capabilities, the knowledge. Just be deliberate and be resilient in the pursuit of that particular objective. If you have that type of drive, I believe that you'd find individuals, institutions, partners along that journey who'll support you to attain your objectives. So I think that those are the two elements that I would always say or give advice to students. And I don't care what it is. It could be a food business, it could be cleaning, it could be whatever it is. Doesn't matter.
Okay, cool.
Okay, well, to finish up the episode,
Yeah, sure.
I'm gonna ask you a question asked by the previous guest.
Wow. Okay.
And I need to really-
I hope the previous guest was good.
I'm sure he was.
Certainly not better than you.
Oh. Is that what you're going to say to the next guest? No, I'm kidding.
No.
I'm kidding.
Okay, so if you could pick one business leader or business persona to hang out with, who would it be? Keep in mind, you cannot use their network or they cannot fund your startup. No benefits except their knowledge.
So this has to be a business person.
Business persona or leader?
You know what? I would allow, because like technically everybody is a
Yeah.
business persona. Like everybody's selling themselves. So you could go for a politician. You could go for anybody.
Currently leaving, and now I'm being like my students. I'm seeking clarity, correct?
No. It could be anybody who lived in the world. So it doesn't.
But you
I
cannot-
would clarify. It doesn't have to be like
Okay.
like it doesn't have to be Jeff Bezos. It doesn't have to be Elon Musk.
That's an interesting one. I think I would go. I'm currently so I do a bit of reading, and I'm currently intrigued by a gentleman called Roger Martin. And I'm intrigued by him for two reasons. I think anybody can go out and look for the books that he has written. He's one of the greatest minds in strategy of our time. I think that he has got into an area of something called strategic ambiguity. His writing and his research is about being comfortable with the unknown, with uncertainty, with ambiguity. And it is counterintuitive to the way we were taught, especially with an MBA. You're taught to look at certainty, de-risk, and move forward, correct? Now, what he is saying is that there's a difference, for example, with strategy and planning. He says planning is about owning that as your own cost, correct? And strategy or strategic direction is about the unknown and being comfortable with that unknown, but believing that the theory of strategy that you've put in place can achieve the set objectives that you have set you out yourself to achieve. Now, that for me is extremely deep, because the question then is going to be, if, for example, I wanted to create, and I hope I don't become too technical, if I wanted to create agility on the balance sheet or on the profit and loss side. So you imagine an income statement. An income statement has a lot of agility. So you can create strategies of agile. You know, your production costs and stuff like that, right? You can always manage to handle that. But on the balance sheet side, imagine that you create, let me put it simply, let me use the analogies that we use in class. So imagine that I have a building, correct? And I've put up a commercial building. And this commercial building, for all intents and purposes, was going to be used for offices. And then there's a downturn in the market. And now I'm stuck with this huge asset that is empty, that is not giving me a return or has an occupancy rate of around about 20%, correct? So we're operating at a deficit of 80%. The question then is going to be, on the balance sheet side, are you able to turn that asset into an agile asset? So how long would it take you to convert it into apartments? How long would it take you to convert or extract other alternative value sets or yield? And that, for me, is where the creativity of Roger Martin sits. Because that, for me, is really clever, because that means that the asset, in terms of the conversion and utilization of the asset, is extremely cheap. It remains an agile asset, and that is an area. And you can put that. I've used the property, but you could use that in any other analogy.
Thank you.
So yeah, Roger Martin is somebody. I'll go for Joshua Green as well, but right now,
Okay.
Roger Martin. Yeah.
That's really cool. Thank you for the answer, and thank you for being in the episode.
No, thank you. I must say thank you, guys. I think you have a fantastic setup here. I must commend you for the tenacity, the entrepreneurial spirit that you have put together this particular podcast. Look forward to coming back onto it, and thank you for the invitation.
All right.
Of course.
Well, thank you everybody for listening, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Take care.